have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker, licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. Welcome to it, folks. It has been a super busy week. It seems like everything that is going to happen is happening now for me, so things are very compressed. I apologize for the lack of shows this week. I'll give you all an update on that in a second, but before I do, let me remind everyone how to get in contact with me. The best way is through the website. Head on over to therebelbroker.com, click on the contact link in the menu bar. Send along any ideas, suggestions, observations, or questions that you might have. While you're there, also go ahead and click the big red button at the top of the page titled Take the Survey to Support the Show. Yes, you'll be helping the show out. I absolutely want it to grow. That's actually part of the news we're going to be talking about here in a minute. But the bigger payoff for you here is that you'll also be put into the drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card. Now, we've been doing this for a while now to the tune of, I don't even know, something north of $600. And we haven't done it for October yet. We're going to do it for October. Probably this time next week, we'll be doing a drawing. But get yourself over to the website, therebelbroker.com. Take that survey. Make sure to use an email address that you do check at least daily. Because if you do win, that's how I'm going to let you know. I'm going to make sure there's a human on the other side of that email address. And then once I've verified it by you responding to that email, then I will send you your winnings through that email address. So make sure all that stuff is correct. It's just my way of saying thank you for taking part in the survey, which is designed to help make the show more marketable and help me grow the show. And $50 seems like $50 per month seems like a pretty good way to do that. So good luck for those of you who haven't yet entered, and congratulations to those of you who've already won. Okay, so I wanted to give everyone an update. Everything that's going on in my life right now, everything seems to kind of be coming to a head right now. Whether you want to talk about business stuff relating to my personal real estate stuff or the real estate business stuff, but also in terms of growing the show, I have not met the goals I had set for myself in terms of where I wanted to be at this point. Things aren't bad. Things just haven't grown at the rate that I was shooting for. So I have to sort of step back and reevaluate what I'm doing. I had invested an awful lot of time in terms of putting the show together, doing it on a daily basis. And of course, there's only a finite number of minutes in the day, so other things had to get sacrificed. So I need to, and that has shown up in me doing less hands-on things than I used to do in real estate that I've delegated to other folks. But of course, that means that the income I generate from that is lower. And I had budgeted out a certain amount of time to do that, to make a go of the show in terms of the time invested. But it means I need to sit back and reevaluate. And it's sort of a catch-22 situation, right? I want to make this show the biggest payoff for my listeners as possible. I honestly want every single show for it to be done. And for folks who have been listening thinking, well, that's good information that I got today. That's something I want to think about, or, hey, that really makes me think more about this. So that's my goal. And I don't know if I'm achieving it or not. I mean, that's the goal I'm shooting for. But the reality is that I need to, and it's a catch-22 because if the more time I would have to invest in the show, the more ways I could deliver content or do more research on those sorts of things. It's really difficult to carve the time out to not only do the show, but do the prep work for the show and come up with the links that I see between a lot of different story items relating to real estate. I still enjoy doing it, but unfortunately, the universe doesn't give us 28 hours in a day. It only gives us 24. So I'm going to have to step back in terms of the number of shows I do regularly. You're always going to get your shows on Fridays. I'm kind of evolving those into a day where we have an interview. So that's going to continue. And the commitment I'm going to make is to do at least 2 other shows in the week. So maybe it'll be a Monday, Wednesday, Friday thing. I'm going to kind of figure that over the next few days. And if other things work out, if other things I have kind of on the fire right now end up coming together, we can go back to the old schedule. My goal would be to be able to go back to the old schedule in January. But I just wanted to let you guys know, because I know that oftentimes the shows don't show up when you expect them. And one of the only ways to build a successful show is to reliably release a show when you say you're going to. So I wanted to bring you in on what's happening on my side of the equation, where I'm trying to find this healthy balance between being able to pay for the time that I need to spend doing the show versus doing the show and all these other types of things that need to be a part of my life in order for all the bills to get paid. So I just wanted to let you know that's going on in the background here. I don't usually bring this kind of stuff up in the show, but I just wanted to let you know that's what's going on. On the upside, this will definitely feed into an interesting show come the end of the year. When we do a 2017 retrospective show, I think we'll have a few interesting things to talk about. So at least there's that. At least we're creating fuel for a future show. And again, I want to thank everyone who has been such a dedicated and really supportive listener of the show, audience member. I have so many folks that I now interact with on a regular basis and talk about a lot of different subjects. And it's absolutely been a fantastic experience, and I'm looking forward to continuing that. I just need to figure out the strategy, because the bottom line is I need to own the reality that it hasn't grown at the rate that I wanted it to, and figure out what I need to do to make that happen better, to help make it something where not only I'm excited enough about the show to realize it can pay for itself and I can move forward with it, but also to inspire the audience to assist me in helping the show grow. So we'll see where we can go. This is by no means me saying goodbye. This is just me saying, I mean, heck, I've been doing this thing since 2007. So I don't see it leaving, but it's going to have to evolve, at least in the near term, in order for me to find that right balance, just to keep the money flowing in the directions that it needs to go. So I hope you understand all that. I appreciate, I'm sure I'll get some messages from a few of you relating to this. But the net effect here is really that you're going to lose a show or 2 per week. I'm probably going to trim off 2 shows per week. And sometimes I may have to trim off 3 depending on what's going on. Like this week was a really good example of just being ridiculously impacted with a lot of stuff. So I couldn't find the time to do the 5 shows in a week. So, and I don't want to keep that being a mystery to all of you who listen. So I hope that's clear. Okay, so on to more interesting things relating to news tidbits. We've got a few stories here that you're probably going to see different perspectives on from the standpoint of the headlines. One of them comes from CNBC. Homebuyers rush to riskier mortgages as home prices heat up. This is actually a video on their website. But the blurb here is the number of adjustable rate mortgage originations jumped just over 40% from the first quarter of this year to the second. And that I think that kind of informs what's going on out in the lending world. And again, there is this bizarre idea that everything that needs to happen is a financial side, is a lending side thing. And I honestly think that that's actually a false. It's actually a false point. That isn't where the solution needs to come from. We've talked about this before. I know we've beaten this horse to death over and over again. But the reality is that the problem needs to be solved with inventory. At least in my area. And I know I've talked to some folks who just see tons and tons of stuff being built, which tends to be multifamily. And we'll see how that affects the marketplace. I think that'll be a very interesting thing to observe in 2018 as more multifamily units come online. But it's going to require a pretty huge migration of what home buyers want in order for this multifamily stuff to really satisfy the needs of housing in a lot of these various areas. So that's one thing to keep an eye on. But what we're seeing from this is that home buyers are willing to take on more risky loans in order to get that purchase done. So we're getting ones where interest rates will adjust. Now, here's what's creepy about this particular trend is if you get a adjustable rate mortgage now, there is almost no question that when your adjustment period comes, when you finally get to that, whatever that, whether it's 3 years or 5 years or whatever the term is before your rate is adjusted, it's going to go up. And that could be a very scary thing because remember, whenever you're buying a home with an adjustable rate mortgage, you're not fixing your housing costs. You are to one degree or another, at least you're limiting it, but the odds are the rate that you're going to pay, the amount you're going to pay per month is going to go up when these adjustments occur. And right now that's more true than ever because interest rates are so ridiculously low compared to historical rates. So what does that do? Well, it feeds the beast, right? We were talking about priming the pump of another bubble or downturn. And here we are in 2007 or 2017. We've seen a 40% jump from the first quarter of this year to the second in terms of the number of adjustable rate mortgage originations. How many years does it take to prime that pump? Well, if there's an awful lot of them being written now in the 3 to 5 year time frame coming up, so 2000 to 2025, 2000 to 2022, we need to figure out what does that mean in that time frame. I mean, if everyone is in a more risky situation, if there is enough of a drop in property values, what does that equal in terms of decisions folks will be willing to make? If folks are challenged and they need to make cuts because now their loans are going to readjust to an amount they can't really afford, what does that equal for the marketplace? We saw sort of an equivalent of this even in the downturn and in the years after the downturn, particularly for folks who had gotten interest-only loans, where they've adjusted to fully amortized loans. And a lot of those folks saw ridiculous increases in the amount they were paying per month. Now, I've mentioned before, I got a loan like that way back. The difference being I paid it off like it was a fully amortized loan. I actually ended up refinancing before that it became an issue, but I could have handled that loan throughout the life of it, and the amount I was paying would have changed by $1 or $2 per month, simply because I was making payments as if it was fully amortized. I just wanted to have that flexibility of if I had months where money was tight, I had a lot of money tied up in other things at that time. I wanted to have that flexibility on a month-to-month basis to be able to back away from making a fully amortized payment and just make the interest-only payment. Now, if we link this with another little piece of data, which is that according to the folks over at Housing Wire, we are looking at an increase of 5.2 million by 2025 in terms of the number of folks who want to be homeowners and will be looking to purchase homes. And again, this is approached from the standpoint of, hey, lenders, are you ready for this? And granted, this is a ways out. I mean, if we're talking about projections of 2025, who knows what the landscape will be like then in terms of construction, new homes, single-family residentials versus multifamily. But again, they're asking this question about lending, and there's no question in my mind, lending will do just fine. The question is, what will we see in terms of inventory? So I'm not real sure why we still get these organizations that are so focused on the financial side of it when that's not the problem. I'm not seeing anybody, again, and I've said this before, in terms of just, in the last week, I have talked to a ton of buyers. I mean, one big thing, one of the things I've done in my own personal business is to really make a push for finding sellers, to find folks who want to list their property. I usually like to do this in the last quarter of the year because I want to get top of mind for folks who are thinking about doing this starting in January and February. Didn't used to be this way. I used to start this process either much later in the year or in that first month or two of a calendar year. But I'm finding that this decision is being made so much earlier over the past few years that it just makes sense to sort of reach out and help people find me at this stage of the game. So I'm out there reaching out, and I'm getting some pretty decent responses to the stuff I'm putting out there to find sellers. But I'm getting so many buyers out there at this, this is even way more than last year. We've talked here on the show before. Whenever I like to share ground truth with you relating to what I'm seeing more folks reaching out to me as buyers now than over the last 2 years. So this time of the year 2016, this time of the year 2015, and it's just all of a sudden happened at the end of September, where I didn't change my advertising. Nothing I did relating to finding buyers changed, but suddenly I had all these folks reaching out, wanting to get squared away, wanted to start a search. And I can't help but think, because this is kind of a common thread in the conversations I'm having with these folks, is these buyers are thinking sellers will be more flexible in their price. There'll be fewer buyers out there competing with me because typically winter is when things ramp down. Well, there's enough buyers out there thinking that the opposite is happening, that we're starting to see actually an uptick in the number of buyers in my marketplace. And as I mentioned before, in my area, properties are continuing to stay on the market less than a month. Days on the market is 2.5 to 3 weeks right now. And almost everything is selling for over asking price. So very interesting to see how this stuff is panning out. And if a whole bunch of these folks, and a lot of these folks are working from a point of frustration, and these are the folks who are feeding this variable rate mortgage trend. A lot of them, I have to give referrals to lenders. They haven't really taken care of the lender problem yet, but it's an interesting dynamic to see how many of them are leaning towards whatever the lowest monthly payment loan is that they can do, instead of thinking 30-year fixed, which given the way the markets are right now, just makes a whole lot more sense. Okay. We've got a couple of more topics to cover today, but we'll do that if we take a quick break. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner-broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. Welcome back, everyone. We are just covering some of the latest news. It's one of those days where there's several smaller stories that are interesting rather than one big news item. Another item from the folks at Zero Hedge, headline, pending home sales plunge. National Association of Realtors admits the housing market has essentially stalled. Now, I've seen this in a couple of different venues, and the headlines all seem to portray this in an odd way, because the only reason why we are seeing this happening again is inventory. It has nothing to do with lending. It doesn't have to do with people not being approved. It is simply a fundamental element of the market, which is there is no supply. It isn't there. We did see a pretty big drop. There were dismal drops in existing and new home sales, according to the article. The pending home sales data for August was a disaster, tumbling 2.6% month over month from July to August, and 3.1% year over year to its lowest point since January of 2016, so just since last year. But at least later in a lot of these articles, they'll point out that the real problem is that there's simply a housing shortage that's plaguing several key markets. Now, this is something I want to bring up because there are a few folks who are listeners to the show who communicate with me through YouTube or communicate with me through the Google Plus page or through Facebook. And they talk about how they're just not seeing what I'm seeing in their market. And I think this is the key to that, in that I think it's a metros area thing. So make sure to get the ground truth for your area. Use the techniques we've talked about here, the metrics we've talked about here, to determine what's actually going on the ground in your area, because it may be very different. All the areas that I've tended to look at sure have shown that we have seen ridiculously low inventories. It's odds are, if I was to be a betting man, if you're listening to this show right now, the odds are that you're in an area where this is happening, where inventory is ridiculously low. Prices are really being pushed up by this lack of inventory, simply because so many people are out there trying to buy these things. And even if we were starting to see a drop in the number of buyers, we'd never be able to detect it, simply because inventory has to grow so much to just meet a portion of the demand out there, that even if we saw 50% of buyers back away from the marketplace, we would still see too little inventory. We would still see homes selling with multiple offers. It would simply be a scenario where instead of 6 offers, they've got 3 offers. You need to figure out if that's what's going on in your area, particularly if you're trying to figure out a strategy to get the best possible deal in markets that you're particularly interested in. Okay. And then finally, just a piece of data that I like to cover is the CoreLogic House Price Index, which is up 6.9% year over year for the month of August. Now, also remember that that's the number you always want to look at. Now, I know in the previous article, we just discussed the month to month change, and that's fine if we keep in mind the seasonal influences. But we also, in that same article, covered the year to year numbers, which was even bigger than the month to month. And in this case, we've seen a 6.9% year over year increase in August, which is exactly the number you want to pay attention to, because it eliminates all of the seasonal influences, the natural ebb and flow that happens because of the time of year that you happen to be in. And another thing to be aware of is this marketplace that we are living in now has had a lot of the standard just seasonal influences turned on their head. I just mentioned it a minute ago in terms of the marketing I do as a real estate person, in terms of who I want to get in front of as potential customers. I'm out there looking at sellers much earlier than I normally would. In past years, that's something I wouldn't think about doing till after Christmas. Well, here it is, October, and I am doing advertising that's aimed at folks who might be interested in selling their property. I can't remember the last time I did that, unless you count last year. Last year I did it, but I didn't do it quite this early. I did it in December, early December. But it's one of those things where this is the new dynamic. This is what we have to work with, and I think a lot of this simply comes down to there is so much demand out there, and there is so much interest on the part of sellers of picking the right time or being ready in time that if homes are going to get listed, there's no longer this guarantee that they're just going to get listed just before summer or in that end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter of a calendar year. CoreLogic House Price Index report is for August. The recent Case-Shiller Index release was for July. The CoreLogic House Price Index is a 3-month weighted average and is not seasonally adjusted. Home prices nationally increased year over year by 6.9%. I think last month when we looked at this number, it was 10.2%? So just a slowdown in the amount of increase on a month-to-month basis. But remember, every single month the last 36 months, we've seen increases. If you do year-to-year comparisons, those months have seen increases from the previous year. So this is just a compounding situation where these prices just keep going. And again, it's all about supply in this case. All right, folks. I hope this has been some valuable information for you. At the very least, it's brought you up to date on some of the latest numbers. I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen to what I have to say on these subjects. And as always, the goal is to leave far more value on the table for you to carry away with you than the time you've invested in listening to this show. Thanks again for listening, everybody. I'll talk to y'all next time.